Welcome back to Talk Tickers. We love to dig into these earnings calls, and today we've got a really interesting one from Fortinet. It's their Q4 2024 report.
Yeah, I was pretty excited to dig into this one myself. They dropped some pretty big news.
Yeah, so maybe for some of our listeners who, aren't super familiar with Fortinet, like what's their deal?
Fortinet, they're a cybersecurity company, right? They're known for their firewalls.
Or Fortigates.
Fortigates, right? And their FortiOS, which is like their operating system that powers their whole security suite.
Okay, yeah. So they're kind of like a one-stop shop for all your security needs. You got your firewalls, you got your, software and everything.
Yeah, kind of like a full platform approach to security.
I like it. Okay, so this earnings call, like what were some of the big takeaways?
I mean, the biggest thing that jumped out at me was they're hinting at this major refresh cycle coming in late 2025.
Ooh, a refresh cycle.
Yeah, so a lot of their older Fortigate models are going to be hitting their end of service date in 2026, which means businesses are going to have to upgrade.
That's going to be huge for them.
Yeah, it could be a huge growth driver.
Right. And so is that kind of what we saw reflected in their Q4 results, or were they kind of, just chugging along?
No, they actually had a really strong quarter.
Okay.
They beat revenue expectations, which is always a good sign.
Always a good sign.
Okay.
And what about product revenue specifically? Because I know,
Yeah.
that's always a key metric for these tech companies.
Yeah, product revenue was up significantly, which I think is a really interesting signal.
Okay. How so?
It suggests that companies are already starting to upgrade their systems ahead of that 2026 deadline.
So they're not waiting till the last minute.
Exactly. They're being proactive, which, in the cybersecurity world, that's a good thing.
Smart. Yeah, because you don't want to wait until you've already been breached to start thinking about security, right?
Exactly. Prevention is key.
Okay, so strong quarter, they're hinting at this big refresh cycle. What else stood out to you?
Well, they've been talking a lot about their FortiSys solution.
FortiSave.
Yeah, it's their unified security solution. It's kind of like a package deal for all your security needs.
Okay, so kind of like taking that platform approach and really bundling everything together.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems to be resonating with customers.
Okay, so why do you think that is? Why are companies, gravitating towards this FortiSys solution?
I think simplicity is a big factor.
Yeah.
Companies are dealing with increasingly complex networks.
Yeah.
And the threat landscape is constantly evolving. So having a single platform to manage all your security needs is really appealing.
It's got to be a lot easier than trying to, stitch together a bunch of different solutions from different vendors.
Yeah, exactly. It streamlines everything.
Okay, I gotcha. And then there was this other thing that kind of caught my eye. Their ASIC technology.
Oh, yeah, they're ASICs.
Can you explain that to our listeners? Because I'm sure some people are like, what is an ASIC?
So ASIC stands for Application-Specific Integrated Circuit. It's basically a custom-designed chip that's optimized for a specific task.
Okay.
And in Fortinet's case, they're using ASICs to accelerate their security and networking functions.
So it's like having a supercharged engine in your security system.
Yeah, exactly. It gives them a performance advantage over competitors who are using more general-purpose chips.
So their stuff is just faster and more efficient.
Yeah, and that's really important in this cybersecurity world where speed can be the difference between stopping an attack and, having a major breach.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so we've got, a lot of positive stuff. Strong quarter. They're hinting at this big refresh cycle. They've got FortiSAS. They've got their ASIC technology. But then there's also this kind of, elephant in the room.
The trade war.
Yeah, the trade war.
The tariffs.
How much is that impacting Fortinet?
They did acknowledge that it's adding some uncertainty to their 2025 outlook, particularly for their business in Latin America and Canada.
So those are some pretty big markets.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on.
Right. And so before we kind of dive into, the implications of those tariffs and what it all means for investors, maybe we should take a quick break.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Talk Tickers. So before the break, we were talking about, some of the big takeaways from Fortinet's earnings call. And one thing that really stood out to me was their operating margin.
Yeah, their operating margin was pretty impressive this quarter, like record-breaking. So what do you think is driving that?
Well, I think it's a sign that they're managing their costs effectively, and they're really good at converting revenue into profit.
So they're not just growing, they're growing profitably.
Exactly, which is, what investors love to see.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And it gives them more flexibility to invest in, future growth opportunities like R&D or maybe even some strategic acquisitions.
Speaking of strategic acquisitions,
Oh, yeah?
they did make a pretty big one this quarter.
They did. Linksys.
Linksys, the home networking company.
Yeah, I was not expecting that.
It was a bit of a head scratcher at first, I'll admit, but when you think about it, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Well, with so many people working from home these days, the line between home and office networks is getting blurrier,
Right.
and companies are realizing that they need to extend their security perimeter to include those home offices.
So by acquiring Linksys Fortinet's basically saying, hey, we want to be the security provider for your home network too.
Exactly. They're trying to bring that enterprise-grade security down to the consumer level.
Which I think is a really smart move because a lot of people are using, the same devices for work and personal stuff.
Right, and those home networks are often much less secure than corporate networks.
Yeah, you're not going to have the same level of firewall protection or intrusion detection at home.
Exactly, and that creates a vulnerability for businesses.
So if Fortinet can provide that same level of security to home users, it could be a game changer for businesses.
Absolutely, it would give them a lot more peace of mind knowing that their remote workers are protected.
Okay, so the Linksys acquisition is definitely interesting, but let's circle back to Fortinet's core business for a minute. We talked about that big refresh cycle that's coming up.
Yeah, that's going to be huge for them.
How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think they're well positioned to capitalize on it. I mean, they already have a large installed base of Fortigate firewalls,
Right.
and a lot of those customers are going to need to upgrade in the next couple of years.
So it's almost like a built-in growth opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. But it also presents some challenges.
Like what?
Well, they're going to need to make sure they have the supply chain capacity to handle that surge in demand.
Right, because if they can't deliver the products on time, they're going to lose customers.
Exactly. And they're also going to need to make sure they have the support infrastructure in place to help those customers with the transition.
Yeah, because, a lot of these companies are relying on Fortinet to keep their network secure. So they're going to need to make sure that that transition is as smooth as possible.
Absolutely. Customer service is going to be key.
Yeah. Okay, so the refresh cycle is definitely a big opportunity, but it's not without its challenges.
Right. And they're also going to have to keep innovating. The cybersecurity landscape is constantly evolving.
Yeah, they can't just rest on their laurels.
Exactly. They need to stay ahead of the curve and keep developing new products and features to stay competitive.
Which it seems like they're doing, though. They've got Fortises, they've got their ASIC technology, they're making strategic acquisitions like Linksys.
Yeah, they're definitely not standing still.
Okay, so overall, it sounds like you're pretty bullish on Fortinet.
I am. I think they're well positioned for continued growth in the coming years, but it's important to remember that the cybersecurity market is notoriously unpredictable.
Right.
So there are always risks to consider.
No investment is ever a sure thing.
Exactly. But I think Fortinet has a lot going for it, and I'm excited to see what they do next.
Okay, so let's have a little fun here and explore a potential wildcard scenario. What if Fortinet, takes this whole home networking thing to the next level?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
What if they create like a whole new market for enterprise-grade security in the home?
Yeah.
Like bundling their powerful security solutions with everyday routers.
That's a really interesting idea.
So we're talking about, this idea of Fortinet bringing enterprise-grade security to the home. Like, what would that actually look like?
Well, I mean, imagine you go to Best Buy, you want to buy a new router. Right now you're basically just getting, Wi-Fi capabilities. But what if you could get a Linksys router that's preloaded with Fortinet's security software?
Whoa.
Like right out of the box, you've got, firewall protection, intrusion detection, maybe even a VPN built right in.
So it's not just like, your basic, Linksys router anymore. It's like Fort Knox for your home network.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, Fortinet could really simplify the user experience. They wouldn't want to overwhelm people with, a bunch of technical stuff.
Right.
They could design an interface that's specifically tailored for home users. So, you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert to manage your own security settings.
Yeah, you don't need a, CISSP certification just to set up your Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
Okay, so I can see how this would be appealing to, individual users who are just, concerned about protecting their data and their devices. But I think the bigger impact here is on businesses.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got millions of people working from home now, and a lot of those home networks are not as secure as, a corporate office would be.
Right. It's a huge vulnerability for companies.
Yeah. And so if Fortinet can kind of extend that that security perimeter to encompass,
Yeah.
every employee's home office, that would be a game changer.
It would give companies so much more peace of mind, knowing that their data is protected no matter where their employees are working from.
Yeah, and it could potentially save them money too, because they wouldn't have to invest as much in other remote security solutions.
Exactly. It could be a win-win for everyone.
Okay, but let's be real here. Like, would people actually pay a premium for a security enhanced router?
I think they would if Fortinet can, effectively communicate the value proposition.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
you got to make people understand, like, hey, this is important. Your home network is a target.
Yeah, because, people are starting to realize that cybersecurity is not just a business issue, it's a personal issue too.
Exactly, especially with all the data breaches and the identity theft that's going on.
It's a real threat.
So if Fortinet can position this as, peace of mind,
Mhm.
protect your family, protect your data, I think there's definitely a market for it.
I agree.
Okay, so this is all speculation, of course, not financial advice.
Right. This is just us having some fun, exploring some what-if scenarios.
But sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones that end up changing the world.
Yeah,
So who knows? Maybe Fortinet will actually make this happen.
it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah. All right, well, that's going to wrap up this deep dive into Fortinet's earnings call. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.